Good morning, class. Today we are going to be learning about fables and gaining the skills of how to retell the story about what we read. So we are going to be focusing on how I can retell the story and describe important details. That is the mission of our lesson today. So who can tell me what a fable is? Just raise your hand and I will call on you. Okay, a story that has animals in it. Okay, anybody else? Okay, the animals are characters and it's teaching us a moral. A moral means a lesson, teaching us or telling us how to do something or how to handle a certain situation. Okay, so today we are going to start reading a chapter book. Chapter book is called Charlotte's Web, one of my favorites. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. We can look at it together. Okay, so here we are, Charlotte's Web. Charlotte's Web by E.B. White. Pictures by Garth Williams. And author of Stuart Little is another book that E.B. White wrote. Okay, so what do we notice right off the bat that's on the cover? Raise your hand. A girl and a pig. What else? A spider. Yes, a spider. Spider's web. Okay, anybody else? The price. Yes, the price is right up here in the corner. Okay, so let's keep going and see what else we notice before we get started. Okay, so what do we notice about these pages? Okay, go ahead. Right, the year, 1952. What year are we in right now? 2020. So is this an old book? Yes, it is. Okay, let's keep going. This is the table of contents. It tells us all about the different titles of the chapters that we're gonna read about. But today we're just gonna be focusing on before breakfast. Okay. So let's do a little picture walk before we get started. Okay. See a girl fighting with someone, right? Over an axe. A lot of words. What's happening in this picture? Little girl feeding a pig. Go ahead. A boy with a gun. Ooh. And that's it for chapter 1. Okay, so just based on those pictures, I want you to write down what you think is going to happen. Okay, so just go ahead and take a second, write down what you think is going to happen, because for homework, you're going to write down what actually happened and tell me if you were right about your prediction or wrong. Okay, go ahead and take a minute for that. Give me a thumbs up when you're ready to move on. Okay, we're going to get started. Chapter 1, Before Breakfast. "Where's Papa going with that axe?" said Fern to her mother as they were setting the table for breakfast. "Out to the hog house," replied Mrs. Arable. "Some pigs were born last night." "I don't see why he needs an axe," continued Fern, who was only 8. "Well," said Mother, "one of the pigs is a runt. It's very small and weak, and will never amount to anything. So your father has decided to do away with it." "Do away with it?" shrieked Fern. "You mean kill it? Just because it's smaller than the others?" Mrs. Arable put a pitcher of cream on the table. "Don't yell, Fern," she said. "Your father is right. The pig would probably die." What's that word, class? Anyway. Fern pushed a chair out of the way and ran outdoors. The grass was wet and the earth smelled of springtime. Fern's sneakers were sopping by the time she caught up with her father. "Please don't kill it," she sobbed. "It's unfair." Mr. Arable stopped walking. "Fern," he said gently, "you will have to learn to control yourself." "Control myself?" yelled Fern. "This is a matter of life and death, and you talk about controlling myself?" Tears ran down her cheeks, and she took hold of the axe and tried to pull it out of her father's hand. Fern said, "Mr. Arable, I know more about raising a litter of pigs than you do. A weakling makes trouble. Now run along." "But it's unfair," cried Fern. "The pig couldn't help being born small, could it? If I had been very small at birth, would you have killed me?" Mr. Arable smiled. "Certainly not," he said, looking down at his daughter with love. "But this is different. A little girl is one thing, a little runty pig is another." "I see no difference," replied Fern, still hanging on to the axe. "This is the most terrible case of injustice I ever heard of." A queer look came over John Arable's face. He seemed almost ready to cry himself. "All right," he said. "You go back to the house, and I will bring the runt when I come in. I'll let you start it on a bottle like a baby. Then you'll see what trouble a pig can be." So let's pause right here. Who are the characters we've met so far in this story? Go ahead. Fern. Fern is the little girl, yes. Who else? The dad. Okay, and what was his name? Mr. Arable. Okay, who else did we meet? The mom, Mrs. Arable, yes. And the little pig, that's right, very good. So where is the father going with the axe? Do we know? He's gonna go and take care of those pigs. Okay. Oh, you have so many wonderful things to say. Okay, when Mr. Arable returned to the house, half an hour later, he carried a carton under his arm. Fern was upstairs changing her sneakers. The kitchen table was set for breakfast, and the room smelled of coffee, bacon, damp plaster, and wood smoke from the stove. "Put it on her chair," said Mrs. Arable. Mr. Arable set the carton down at Fern's place. Then he walked to the sink and washed his hands and dried them on a roller towel. Fern came slowly down the stairs. Her eyes were red from crying as she approached her chair. The carton wobbled, and there was a scratching noise. Fern looked at her father. Then she lifted the lid of the carton. There, inside, looking up at her, was a newborn pig. It was a white one. The morning light shone through its ears, turning them pink. "He's yours," said Mr. Arable, "saved from an untimely death. And may the good Lord forgive me for this foolishness." Fern couldn't take her eyes off the tiny pig. "Oh," she whispered, "oh, look at him. He's absolutely perfect." She closed the carton carefully. First she kissed her father, then she kissed her mother. Then she opened the lid again, lifted the pig out, and held it against her cheek. At this moment, her brother Avery came into the room. Avery was 10. He was heavily armed, an air rifle in one hand, a wooden dagger in the other. "What's that?" he demanded. "What's Fern got?" "She's got a guest for breakfast," said Mrs. Arable. "Wash your hands and face, Avery." "Let's see it," said Avery, setting his gun down. "You call that miserable thing a pig?" "That's a fine specimen of a pig. It's no bigger than a white rat." All right, well, let's stop right here and ask ourselves a few questions. What new characters did we have? The brother Avery, yes. And what does he have? A rifle, right. Okay. So how do we know that this story is taking place a long time ago? Because of the rifles. Because that's not something that we want to do nowadays. Okay. And what is the setting? Where's this happening? On a farm. Okay. All right. Good. All right, let's finish up the chapter. Wash up and eat your breakfast, Avery, said his mother. The school bus will be along in half an hour. Can I have a pig too, Pop? Asked Avery. No, I only distribute pigs to early risers, said Mr. Arable. Fern was up at daylight, trying to rid the world of injustice. As a result, she now has a pig. A small one, to be sure, but nevertheless a pig. Just shows what can happen if a person gets out of bed promptly. Let's eat. But Fern couldn't eat until her pig had had a drink of milk. Mrs. Arable found a baby's nursing bottle and rubber nipple. She poured warm milk into the bottle, fitted the nipple over the top, and handed it to Fern. Give him his breakfast, she said. A minute later, Fern was seated on the floor in the corner of the kitchen with her infant between her knees, teaching it to suck from the bottle. The pig, although tiny, had a good appetite and caught on quickly. The school bus honked from the road. Run, commanded Mrs. Arable, taking the pig from Fern and slipping a donut into her hand. Avy grabbed his gun and another donut. The children ran out to the road and climbed into the bus. Fern took no notice of the others in the bus. She just sat and stared out the window, thinking what a blissful world it was and how lucky she was to have an entire charge of a pig. By the time the bus reached school, Fern had named her pet, selecting the most beautiful name she could think of. His name is Wilbur, she whispered to herself. She was still thinking about the pig when the teacher said, Fern, what is the capital of Pennsylvania? Wilbur, replied Fern dreamily. The pupils giggled. Fern blushed. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And we're going to talk about what happened. What happened in this story? Okay. All right, so we're going to take some time right now and we're going to write 5 sentences telling what happened in the first chapter. And I'm going to go around, raise your hand. I'm going to look at what you're doing. And if you need any help or anything to get you started, I'm here for that. And I have sent you all the link for this very book so you can review it and look at it again tonight. Read it over to answer your homework and to see if your predictions are correct. There's also a Spanish version, and you can make the print bigger or smaller. Thank you so much, class, and I'm going to be making my rounds here and checking on each of you.